with a generally unpredictable picture.
How can I run excursions when the transport company hasn't got a coach that doesn't need fixing every 5 minutes?
Use a bit of initiative.
If I show you my figures, will you show me yours?
Bringing one cold front after another.
I can't pretend that we never met.
It won't work, Lee.
I'm being chucked, aren't I?
Storm clouds are brewing in Portugal.
Get to the back of the bus, quick!
Take a break with the Sunburn team. Next Saturday at 8:55 on BBC1.
As a tribute to the actor Tony Doyle, who died yesterday, BBC1 is showing an episode of Ballykiss Angel tomorrow evening. So the new lineup is Ballycay at 6:15, Antiques Roadshow now at 7:05, with Mrs. Bradley as scheduled at 8 o'clock.
I thought you were meant to be sorting out the TV licence. Frank and Barbara, Pat and Sandra, they pay less than £9 a month. But us, no. My husband would rather play with his son's toys.
Call free on 0800 328 2020 and pay for your TV licence by direct debit.
This winter, lose yourself in a new season of drama on BBC1.
Your challenge is to score a century, 100 kisses of 100...
My dad used to say that everyone has at least one life-changing moment.
Get off me! Because blokes like you can only manage it with birds like her or her.
That's enough, come on.
Sorry, look, not you. I said get off me or I'll whack you!
She's the one.
Spilled your father's blood and for lust.
I fear the time has come that the truth about Charlie be told.
Now, hush your mouth and give us a kiss.
Give him a kiss, girls. Justine.
Well, you've kissed virtually every woman in Scotland. Aren't you going to give me one?
Sometimes one can't help thinking how much simpler life would be without sex.
You think you're hard, Beck, don't you? I'll show you hard.
BBC Drama on BBC1. Enter a different world.
She's the one.
So now on BBC1, think of a film question for Bren. And what about the new uniform? You can be honest.
At CNP Bank, we reward our staff for their actions. Because we believe if we develop their potential...
Guess I'm just unlucky with girls.
Well, perhaps you should try my lucky teddy.
Is he washable?
They'll serve you, the customer, better.
Can you go away, please?
Join CNP Bank. It's more than a bank, it's a family. The Peter Principle starts Thursday at 9:30 on BBC1.
God, you look stupid.
Things change fast, very fast nowadays.
It's about standards, it's about communicating.
Honesty, integrity, it's what the BBC stands for.
As a journalist, all you've got is your credibility. If you haven't got that, then you're lost.
Energy, patience, time, knowledge of the subject.
People want to be told what's going on in their world.
This is BBC News 24. I'm Gavin Esler.
Should young mothers be rewarded for rejecting abortion?
Crisis pregnancy doesn't have to be a crisis baby.
Amen. If you want moral support, if you want financial help, come to us.
Can an evangelical group achieve weight loss through faith?
I never realised the food was the sin. Listen to the Lord, that's the main thing.
And can there ever be dignity in a solitary death?
I heard that he had Burmese father.
This man's been laying dead since last Wednesday.
Oh, it stinks!
We're getting environment into that pit.
Personal stories. Beyond Belief, a new series of Everyman starts tomorrow at 10:40 on BBC1.
FA Cup 5th round action. Match of the day on BBC1 in 15 minutes. The BBC News and Sport now on BBC1 with Fiona Bruce.
Gerry Adams tells the Ulster Unionists don't play hardball with the IRA. He warns the IRA won't scrap weapons if the Northern Ireland executive is suspended. A man is killed after a building collapses in Liverpool. Another is in hospital. Politicians review their security after yesterday's sword attack in Cheltenham. And after all the hype, Francis is 45 minutes away from stepping into the ring with Iron Mike. Good evening. The Sinn Féin president, Gerry Adams, has warned that the IRA will no longer cooperate on scrapping their weapons if the Northern Ireland executive is suspended. Ulster Unionists have threatened to resign from the executive unless a report due out on Monday from the decommissioning body shows the IRA are making some movement toward disarmament.
It was a sombre, even angry Gerry Adams who came for a BBC Radio Ulster interview. He said he deeply resented accusations that Sinn Féin had reneged on agreements or understandings. And he warned the contact between the IRA and the decommissioning body, headed by General John de Chastelain, would end if the Assembly collapsed or was suspended.
If this collapses, there is not going to be decommissioning. We got the IRA to go into the de Chastelain Commission to talk about this issue, to try and sort this issue out, provided the institutions were in place. Are the IRA going to stay in there if the institutions are collapsed, especially if the institutions are collapsed at the whim of one party because of a unilateral date set by them?
The Ulster Unionists are angry too. On the same programme, one of the party's ministers said the decommissioning body must report progress on Monday or they could not continue in government.
I couldn't take you to one single person who will say to me, we can just sweep this issue under the carpet and go past 31st of January as if nothing had happened. We cannot. The community, the unionist community just feels that it's been steamrollered and walked over time and time again, and they just will not take any more.
Barely 6 weeks after history was made with the formation of the devolved power-sharing government, the process is in as much trouble as at any time, and this crisis may well prove to be the most difficult to resolve. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
Rescuers in Liverpool have found the body of a man in the ruins of a building which collapsed earlier today. 4 other men escaped, but one of them is seriously injured in hospital after jumping from the building as it came down.
The 3-storey building on a main road through Bootle collapsed just after 9 o'clock. It had been due for demolition and a 5-man team of contractors was working on the roof and upper floors. One man fell through to the basement and was trapped beneath tons of rubble. All day, rescue workers tried to get to him, inching their way through the debris, but they were hampered by strong winds and the fear that more of the building might collapse. Sniffer dogs were brought in. They identified an area in which the search was concentrated. And then came the announcement that a body had been found.
Until you find somebody who's not alive, then you're always going to hope that you're going to find somebody, you're going to bring them out and they're going to be alive. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case here.
It's expected an investigation will take place to discover why the building collapsed. Another workman who jumped from a height of 40 feet onto a pavement suffered serious leg and back injuries. The 3 other men escaped with minor cuts and bruises. This 8-hour operation has taken place in the most difficult of conditions, and now work will continue throughout the night to make this building safe. Kevin Bouquet, BBC News, at Bootle and Merseyside.
Police in Gloucestershire are still questioning a 49-year-old man in connection with a sword attack at the Liberal Democrat offices in Cheltenham yesterday. They say the party worker who died in the attack, Andrew Pennington, suffered multiple stab wounds to his chest.
At Cheltenham Town Football Club, 1 minute's silence was observed before the start of the match against Hartlepool as a mark of respect for Andrew Pennington, who died of multiple stab wounds. Councillor Pennington is thought to have died trying to protect the local MP Nigel Jones, seen here on his right. Mr Jones is still in hospital recovering from the cuts he received in the attack and said he was devastated by the death of his right-hand man. It was one of many tributes.
Andy Pennington was a tremendous councillor. In fact, he was a man of small stature, but of a tremendous heart.
and he really put everything into his life, into his constituency work.
The Liberal Democrat office in Cheltenham has remained sealed off. Police say the attacker had a 2-foot sword. It's emerged he'd been a regular visitor to his MP here for years.
Nice to meet you.
But across the country, MPs saw constituents in their surgeries as usual today. It's an essential, if unglamorous, part of their work.
We're writing to the relevant authorities.
Violence is rare, though threats are not.
When a constituent comes to see their Member of Parliament, it's perhaps because they have already contacted every single government department, health authority, and they're really at their end of their tether. And so they perhaps are already a little bit aggressive.
But most MPs consider that part of the job, and fundamental changes are unlikely. This MP has a regular surgery here in the local library. Clearly it would be impractical and undesirable to introduce stringent security somewhere like this. Simon Hughes had round-the-clock security for a while after receiving death threats, but says politicians cannot be completely protected.
I guess now is the time to see if we can do better to protect those who work for us, those who work with us, and other people who come to see us, but without changing the nature of the relationship.
MPs of all parties say it's essential for the public to have access to their elected representatives. Carol Walker, BBC News.
A trawler stranded by storms in the North Atlantic is being towed to safety by a rescue boat. The trawler, the Audacious, ran into trouble off the coast of Rockall. Its wheelhouse was smashed and it lost electrical power. An RAF Nimrod plane led the attempt to rescue the 7 crewmen. An 81-year-old woman from Worcestershire who was jailed for failing to pay her council rates has been released from prison. Nellie Copson owed nearly £3,000 in rates on her disused shop in Droitwich. She was released after the Free Nellie campaign took her case to the High Court. A plane has been sent to Britain to transport the former dictator Augusto Pinochet back to Chile. The aircraft arrived at RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire earlier this evening. But it's still unclear if the Home Secretary will allow Pinochet, who's accused of human rights violations, to leave the country. Police have clashed with hundreds of demonstrators at the World Economic Forum at Davos in Switzerland. At least 2 policemen were injured when protesters threw sticks and smashed windows, trying to get near the conference centre where President Clinton had been speaking.
A clash of ideology on the streets of Davos. The most obvious symbols of global capitalism bore the brunt of the violence. More than 500 protesters vented their anger against big business, hoping to get their message across to the company executives and politicians attending the World Economic Forum. Some delegates were in the midst of the trouble. The anarchists made their way through the ski resort towards the forum's main meeting. Swiss police surrendered control of part of the town to the demonstrators. The authorities concentrating on protecting the area just a short distance from the conference. With so many influential and powerful people attending the World Economic Forum, it was always going to be a target. But the police have brought in extra reinforcements. Now there's a tense standoff. At the conference, President Clinton said demonstrations like the one in Seattle last year showed some people were unhappy with the global economy. They felt social issues were being ignored. Politicians didn't seem to care.
That's why people are in the streets. They don't have any place to come in and say, okay, here's what I think, and here's the contribution I have, here's the beef I have. How are we going to work all this out?
Tonight, police broke up the demonstration with tear gas, but the protesters have made their point. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Davos.
Now with news of tonight's big fight and the rest of the day's sport, here's Sue Thurl.
Fiona, thank you very much. Well, in just over half an hour's time, that controversial heavyweight contest between former world champion Mike Tyson and Julius Francis finally gets underway. And despite all the pre-fight hype, Tyson is expected to be the easy winner.
The queues had snaked back into the Manchester night long before the gates were due to open. The emotions aroused by Mike Tyson, both for and against, ensuring that security was tight. Outside his hotel, a women's vigil protesting at his presence went largely unnoticed as the invited guests filed out to their limousines. Fame has been something of a stranger to Julius Francis, but he got into the spotlight this afternoon as he took to the pitch at half-time during Manchester United's game at Old Trafford. In the theatre of dreams, the man who most expects to be swiftly dispatched to the land of Nod tonight. Meanwhile, speculation continues about Mike Tyson's bizarre behaviour before yesterday's weigh-in. He took off for the airport, apparently intent on flying back to America in exasperation at a last-minute contract wrangle. But he returned soon after getting there, and today the fuss was all being played down.
It was something that was very, very inconsequential. Maybe in time it'll come out what it was. It was not, and being upset and running. It was none of those things.
Mike Tyson arrived at the Manchester Arena a short while ago, and although there will be those who will now question whether he's fully focused, most would argue that with only half a mind on the job, he should still get it done pretty quickly tonight. Kevin Geary, BBC News, Manchester.
In the fifth round of the FA Cup, First Division Bolton booked their place in the quarter-finals at the expense of Second Division Cambridge United. Bob Taylor scored twice as Bolton put their Worthington Cup disappointment behind them with a 3-1 win at the Abbey Stadium. And at Goodison Park, David Unsworth scored the opening goal for Everton in their 2-0 win over Preston North End. The games between Coventry and Charlton, Fulham versus Tranmere and Gillingham against Sheffield Wednesday are all featured on Match of the Day after this programme. So if you don't want to know the scores, look away now. In the Premiership, David Beckham's late goal at Old Trafford gave Manchester United a victory over Middlesbrough. Earlier, Juninho had missed a penalty for the visitors. So with no other Premier League action today, that result means the champions go back to the top of the table. They're level on points with Leeds but have a superior goal difference. In Scotland, the weather provided one of the biggest surprises in the third round of the Tennent's Scottish Cup. Storm damage forced a postponement of Celtic's tie with Inverness Caledonian Thistle just half an hour before kick-off. But on the pitch, Hearts substitute Gary McSwiggan produced one of the performances of the day. He scored twice as the Premier League side came from 2-0 down to beat Stenhousemuir. The games between Hibs and Dunfermline and St Mirren against Aberdeen can both be seen on Sports Scene after this programme. So again, if you don't want to know the scores, then look away now. In rugby union, the Tetley's Bitter Cup fifth round produced some thrilling ties today, but the outstanding game was at Vicarage Road, where league leaders Northampton were narrow victors over Saracens, winning by 34 points to 32.
The meeting between the Premiership leaders and Saracens always promised something special, and the crowd at Vicarage Road were not to be disappointed. Within 6 minutes, Northampton were already notching up their second try through Matt Allen to set up an early lead. But Saracens fought back in determined fashion, and a penalty from Lacroix put them in front by half-time. The lead changed almost by the minute after the interval, and this try from Scott Murray ensured Saracens were just ahead with 20 minutes to go. But the real drama was still to come. New England recruit Ben Cohen went over for Northampton, and the resulting conversion gave his side a 34-32 advantage. Then, in the last minute, Saracens were awarded a penalty, and fans on both sides had to endure an agonising wait for Matt Leake to take the kick. It proved to be a costly miss, with Northampton left to celebrate a place in the last 8. Paul Newman, BBC News.
And Lindsay Davenport is the new Australian Open tennis champion. She beat defending champion Martina Hingis in straight sets. Later tonight, Andre Agassi and Yevgeny Kafelnikov meet in the men's final. Fiona.
Thanks, Sue. That's all from the newsroom tonight. Good night.
Joining David Frost for breakfast tomorrow morning, the BBC's new Director-General Greg Dyke and Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams on BBC1 at 9 o'clock.
Good evening to you. We've seen some pretty fierce winds today across Scotland and North East England too. Winds gusting up to 80 to 100 miles an hour. But those winds will slowly ease down through this evening and tonight. And then they'll be replaced by a fairly gusty west to south-westerly winds during tomorrow. But the orange colour indicates there'll be milder winds, though we should see temperatures back up into double figures across a large part of the UK by the end of Sunday afternoon. Now, we've got a fair number of snow showers still affecting Scotland, but clearer skies further south. Still some patchy rain though, running across Ireland, Wales, the Midlands, into southern parts of England, and that rain will pep up again later on in the night. Now, it will turn cold under those clearer skies, touch of frost to come up in the northeast there, but stay mild and breezy the further southwest you are. And by the morning, I think we'll see some more wet weather running up towards the province, with the rain and drizzle becoming more persistent too across Wales and southwest England. That band of rain then spreading northeastwards fairly steadily during the day on Sunday. For a while there'll be some snow on its forward edge across the mountains of Scotland, also the far northeast, but in the south here not too much rain about. After a bright-ish start, I think we'll see some brighter weather again in the afternoon.
You're out for a few drinks and everyone's happy.
It's exciting. It's very exciting.
Suddenly, imperceptibly, it starts to turn ugly.
It's alcohol. It turns nice kids into raving lunatics.
But all too often, this is the reality on Saturday nights.
My heart was bursting out of my chest and I thought I was going to have a heart attack and die.
And this is the story of some of the people whose job it is to go and sort it.
I am not a punch bag for the general public. I am there to protect them.
Hard men on the sharp end.
I'm a violent man, but I'm a violent man only with people that are violent to me.
Muscle starts next Saturday at 10 on BBC1.
A deadly game of switch, changing times for Mulder and Scully. The X-Files on BBC1 at 11:40.
Everybody got the headlines. Only one channel got close up to the action behind the headlines. BBC Choice cameras get unprecedented access before, during and after the big fight. Mike Tyson in the UK, Monday at 10, exclusive to BBC Choice, one of the BBC's digital channels.
FA Cup football now on BBC1 with Gary Lineker.
Good evening. In a week when the FA promised to return to the Cup's traditional values, what could the fifth round deliver?